For the first time in a long while, I finally have an answer to something. Perhaps not even that, but at least I now have the right question to ask. Will you leave or stay? Hurry, Lilly. I'm moving as fast as I can. I can barely make out Lily's voice over the deafening pounding of the rain. Even though I dislike pulling her around, the situation calls for it. I turn forward, my free hand over my head, in a futile attempt to keep at least my hair dry. My vision seems to be in grayscale. This really is rotten weather for summer, and the last kind of climate I'd want for a date. A pity. I'd even checked the weather forecast beforehand, one of the very few times I've ever done so, only for it to say that Sunday afternoon would be fine. Looking to Lily, her shoulders are by now completely drenched, with her right hand holding tightly to mine and her left gripping her retracted cane. This horrid downpour came on just as we were between our destination and Yamaku, so we decided to try rushing the rest of the distance rather than doubling back. Entirely unused to running this fast, Lily's using all her concentration just to avoid tripping over. Hisao, do you know where we're going? Even she's reduced to shouting to try and be heard over the combined noise of the wind and the rain. The rest of my voice is completely drowned out by an even heavier burst of rain. The what? She shouts back. The Shanghai. How far is it? It shouldn't be far now. It doesn't take long before I call out to her once again. It looks like we're safe. It's just up ahead. I quickly pull up to a stop just in front of the familiar exterior, the lantern outside still giving off its reliable glow, and wait for Lily to catch her breath before going in. Ladies first. The tiny bell inside rings out when I hold the door open for her, a smile and a polite nod being my reward before entering myself. As I step in behind her and wipe my feet, only a quick glance is necessary to notice the distinct lack of activity. The Shanghai doesn't seem to get much in the way of patronage, and today is no different. Only a couple of tables are occupied. Summoned by the bell's ringing, a most expected person comes to greet us. Welcome to the Shanghai. Yuko looks chipper today. Trying to predict her moods is pretty hard, but it's a nice change from the norm. Hello, Yuko, Lily says. Hey! Good afternoon, you two. She takes a deep bow, somewhat taken aback as she rights herself again and gets a better look at us. What happened to you? You both look... Her eyes drift toward the glass of the door behind us. Oh dear. We're inside now at least, I tell her. I think that's the most important thing. It's nice and cozy, Lily adds. You're lucky to be working inside today. It has been nice and quiet. I like days like this. Oh wait, sorry. Is there anything you'd like? French vanilla tea, please. I'll have the same, I add. Right, coming right up. She quickly skitters off with a determined look on her face, trying very hard not to forget our orders. If nothing else, she is at least dedicated to her jobs. I lead Lily to an empty seat before the two of us settle down. As usual, there's a large difference between my exhausted flopping down into my seat and Lily's delicately sliding into hers, her cane set beside her. For a while, I just idly watched the rain falling outside. The occasional person runs down the street, trying to stay as dry as possible, hands often tightly gripping a rain-soaked umbrella. Lily sits just as quietly as I, her eyes closed as she intently listens to all that's happening. It's a comfortable, relaxing silence that exists between us, just the type that we'd so often shared together in the past months. For Lily, at least. I can't help replaying the words of her sister in my mind, at times contrasting them to both our time spent together since I entered Yamaku, and to the way we've been since we started dating. No matter how much I try, I can't work Lily out. It's as if the harder I try to second-guess her emotions and her potential decision, the more difficult it becomes to reach a clear conclusion. It makes me doubt whether I'd ever really understood her. In the end, I'm going to have to ask, even though I very much want to avoid doing so. You seem quiet today, Hisao. Really? I reply. You seem so enthusiastic about taking me out on a date. I'd assumed you had something specific you wanted to do. No, not really, I say. Just wanted to spend some time with you. Is that so? Fine. There was one other thing, I admit. A little grin finds its way onto Lily's face, her knowing full well that she's bested me. It makes what I want to say all the more awkward. It was just... well, Akira and I were talking. Oh? What's with that tone? I ask her. You two do seem to get on well, don't you? Well, I do think she's a pretty cool person to talk with. It'd be nice if any of the teachers were anything like her. Cool, Lily says. For a moment I try to place her tone of voice, my mouth curling into a smirk as I realize it. You're not jealous, are you? I'm not jealous, she says. After her teasing me over such a thing on our first date, I don't feel too bad having a little laugh at her expense this time around. As we settle down, though, it's only a minor distraction from the real point of why I brought Lily here. Don't worry, it was mostly just everyday stuff, I tell her. That said, there was something Akira mentioned that I wanted to talk to you about. When you went to see your family in Inverness a while back, she said, Akira told you about my family's summons, hasn't she? Seconds tick by while I try to read Lily's face, an odd mixture of feelings written on it. She seems annoyed, but also somewhat confused. Here, Yuko interrupts. She tentatively slides our drink onto the table, her presence oddly small. As she walks back to the counter after a quick polite nod, I realize the air between me and Lily is thick, and our expressions are both somewhat pensive. Even though she says I should lead my own life, Lily begins, she still interferes at the worst times. I don't think you should blame Akira here, I interrupt her. She's just looking out for you, and it's not like I can't understand her concern over this. Lily's irritation gives way to an awkward and largely unsuccessful attempt to mask her feelings. She really doesn't deal well with being cornered on personal topics. I know, but I just wanted some more time. I knew you'd have figured it out eventually, but... You were intentionally hiding this from me? I ask her. For how long were you planning to do so? As I said, I simply wanted more time to think it through. I wanted to be sure of my decision before telling you. So, what did you decide to do in the end? I know what I want her to say, but a awful feeling refuses to leave my gut. My family does dearly want me to return to them, and Akira will be going as well. I could still teach as a career, whether it be here or there. So, you're going. How long have you known? I already know you were asked when you first went to Scotland about a month ago. Some time, Lily says. My frustration very nearly boils over. The fact that she's done this affects me more than it should. For her to not only be leaving, but to have been actively hiding her own plans from me, and after seeming for so long to be the one solid pillar of support and reliability I could depend on. It feels as if the foundation underneath me is suddenly shifting drastically, much faster than I can adapt to. Perhaps this isn't so much frustration as sheer unease. Lily, I'm sorry. I wanted to think this through completely. I wasn't trying to take advantage of you, please. I know, Lily, I know. This is just really sudden. I guess this means that once you go, we'll be breaking up. For one of the few times I've seen since I met her, she's genuinely lost for words. She doesn't look surprised, no doubt because the fact had dawned on her once she became sure of her decision, but rather she appears genuinely unsure of how to deal with the situation now that it's in front of her. We could try pursuing a long-distance relationship, she says. They're getting more and more common these days, after all. Even as she says it, the tone of her voice gives away that she doesn't truly believe what she's saying. Lily is far too old-fashioned to be able to cope with a relationship without any kind of physical presence, and even I am to an extent. All we would ever be to each other would be a voice from the other side of the world. In the end, trying to rationalize everything is futile. Any attempts to try and connect what's happening with the future or past just seem to get more difficult the more I concentrate. Those quiet moments when we just walk side by side, the precious time we spent with Hanako and Akira, the casual chatter we had during lunchtimes, the times we made love, the confessions of our feelings to each other. All pointless. All just a fleeting moment in our young lives. We're just two children pretending to be adults, aren't we? I ask. A long, long silence hangs in the air between us. The noise of the other patrons drinking and talking only makes the situation feel more strange and disconnected. Lily's face remains low, her dejected expression clouding it. I'm sorry, Hisao. A simple apology and no more. She's left entirely without any further response or comment. With a long sigh, I gather what's left of my thoughts and ask the final question I have for her. When will you be going? I'll be leaving with Akira, so it'll be a little less than a week. The beginning of summer holidays? Just a little afterward, yes. Her tone is unusually slow and steady, her apologetic and depressed mood all the more written to her face as she tries to hide it in her voice. In the end, I can't even keep my promise of going to Tanabata with her before she leaves. I look down, seeing my face reflected in the now lukewarm cup of neglected tea sitting in front of me. I really thought I'd left this kind of expression behind. For a while, I just stared down into the still surface, trying to sort through my emotions to get at what course of action I should take, whether it be right now or in the future. But just as before, the effort is wasted. I glance up to see Lilly gently sipping her cool tea without complaint, her face drawn and shoulders slumped. She looks to be deep in thought too, a strangely cold atmosphere coming between us as we isolate ourselves to mull things over. Even as Lily's cup slowly empties, mine remains untouched. It's a long time before I notice the rain dying down outside and the few other patrons of the Shanghai having left. The chill of the rapidly darkening evening permeates the dormitory hallways. While trudging down the corridor to my room, I see a unwelcome movement from up ahead. Sure enough, the opening of the door opposite mine heralds the arrival of a bespectacled Kenji. "Hey man, what's... Whoa, dude, you look awful, I think. You okay?" He really has a knack for making any situation better. I don't really want to go into it. It's late. Okay, that's cool. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm, here. I look at him for a minute before surrendering my stern front and awkwardly scratching the back of my neck, embarrassed by my standoffish response to him. "Thanks, Kenji." "Hey, it's cool. That's what friends are for, right?" "Yeah, you're right. See ya." I open the door to my own dorm room and close it behind me as he quickly waves me off. The solid thud the door makes against the doorframe sounds out a final call for the life I've led since coming to Yamaku. I just stand in my darkened room, fruitlessly attempting to work out what I should do from this point onwards. Just what should I do? So we take Lily out on what's to be our last date. A torrential downpour walk to the Shanghai. Not nearly the class and, shall I say, ambiance of our previous date at the expensive restaurant, but one that is far more pivotal and far more important, shall we say, than that previous date was. Once inside, we kind of dropped the bombshell that we've talked to Akira, and she has told us about the plans to, or at least she told us about your summons back to Scotland. So we ask her about it, and she reveals that yes, she is planning on going back. And apparently had been for some time, had just been, as she says, at least her excuse is waiting to be sure of her answer first. Hard to say. Hasao takes it rather kindly and understandingly. I have to say that he definitely, as a stand-in for the player, he definitely has more patience and all than I do. I think I would have been a good deal more angry and everything, as he is realizing that his stability and his pillars of strength are crumbling underneath him. As I say, I would have been more bitter, and I think I would have had one more question for her. It would have been something sarcastic like, and exactly when were you, you're leaving in a week, exactly when were you planning on telling me this? in the car on the way to the airport while we thought we were just dropping off Akira. So, but I'm not quite as nice as he is about this sort of situation. I have found out in the past, and it really comes across as pretend is particularly hurtful, being that, as we've discussed, in all her questions, all the decision choices that you've had. Lily's choices have all been about honesty. They've all been about being open with her, being frank with her, not hiding your condition and everything. And for her to have turned around like this and to be hiding something this important from us just becomes more hurtful. And then, just to cap off the bizarro world we seem to have found ourselves in this evening, Hasao gets a last meeting with Kinji, who, is coming across as being very comforting and understanding, and says, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. So even Kinji can tell that we're not doing good and wants to try and help us. So I think we have one more episode to go. Looking ahead a little bit, I think there's probably enough there for 2 episodes if I were to break it up, but there's no really good place to break it up. So we will see how it is. I'm hoping to get that recorded tomorrow morning after work and get it up later in the morning, early afternoon. And then we shall be done with the Lily Path. And as I said, at that point, we will be taking a break from it all before coming back at some point in the future to do Shizune and Rin. So we will see you tomorrow, and thanks for coming along.